York for a decade and a half now. And he had heard about co-working through Chris and Tara, and a guy named Noel Hidalgo, who in New York was also working on a shared artist collaborative place called The Change You Want to See in Brooklyn. And so you sort of have this West Coast, East Coast thing going on, where you have the sort of West Coast co-working originators meeting up with the East Coast co-working originators. They didn't even know there was a thing called co-working until they heard about people doing these interesting shared offices in San Francisco, and we all met up and had beers in New York. And I came back from there and went, I want to work on this for a while. This is really cool. And it just sort of spiraled out of control. I started talking on the co-working Google group more about my interest in doing this in Philadelphia. And a couple of other people from a couple of other cities started popping up on the Google group and said, oh, we're doing something in our city too. And we were doing the same thing, sort of the open design process, not just within our individual spaces, but on the Google group that now a lot of people interact with. I actually had, for me very personally, I had a moment where I was going to move to San Francisco to learn how San Francisco did co-working, because I really love the citizen space model. At least the ethos of it. The business model, I wasn't even really thinking, I wanted citizen space in Philadelphia. And through a series of events, I was going to get a job in the Bay Area, I was going to work in Mountain View. 2 days a week I was going to work from citizen space, 3 days a week I was going to understand how geek culture worked and bring that back to Philadelphia. And long story short, the job fell through. I ended up not moving to San Francisco, but it was a moment of reflection, me going, why was I attracted to those people again? Why was I attracted to the idea of a co-working space? And it was the fact that it was easier for me to find people that thought like me in San Francisco 3,000 miles away than it was people in my own backyard. So that's screwed up. But that sounds like a solvable problem, if I try. And so my search for a co-working space immediately turned into a search for people. I said, can I find people that want to think more open? Can I find people that want to do great work on the internet, want to make great things, they want to change the world around them? And if I can find them, then I don't have to leave Philadelphia. It's a great place to live, my family's nearby, I've got business, I've got clients. I just don't have people like me. And the cool thing was I not only found those people, but I found that they were also looking for those people. And I said, cool, well, let's do that together. Then I look back to how Chris and Tara had done Citizen Space, so okay, we're going to do this literally together. And as the group coalesced and grew and we were doing jellies and things like that, and people were starting asking, like, what if we had a place to do this every day? And I was like, oh, right, that co-working thing. And here's how it works. And they said, oh, that's really cool. And I said, well, it's probably going to cost some money. And they said, that's okay, we really want to be able to do this every day. And so I sat down with my business partner, who I had met through that journey, and said to Jeff, we have to figure out a way to make this sustainable, because I can't be like Chris and Tara, who are basically subsidizing people working for free. I don't have a Bay Area consulting rate to have all these startups that just got millions of dollars to pay me. We need to have this thing be able to pay for itself. He goes, yeah, you're right. And I've worked in these artist communities that they get people together in a space and everybody shares the rent, but ultimately somebody has a bad month and they can't pay their part of the rent and everybody feels the pain, and so we need to make sure we avoid that. And I said, yeah, I think you're right. And so we looked into our membership and figured out how do we solve these problems, and then in August of 2007 we opened our first space, at which the opening included Chris and Tara, who had originally inspired me. They flew in from San Francisco. And in the spirit of the open source origins, as soon as we were open, I turned around and I said, I have to share this process, I have to share this story, I have to share the big story, which I only get to do once in a while, but all the little stories of what makes things good and what makes things not so good. And that's why, if you've seen my posts on my blog or on the Google group, that's me sort of fulfilling my end of the bargain. They gave me the story to continue telling. And I feel like it's my responsibility to do a good job in telling that story back. And so, I can fast forward through years and 4.5 years now of meeting many people in this room, many people that have been here this weekend, and many other people around the world who weren't here this weekend. But the cool thing to me is how great this community is at turning the page in the story to the next page, realizing it's blank, and instead of freaking out